back to my channel. So today I am going to be doing a Pamela Anderson inspired makeup tutorial while talking about Pam and Tommy, the show on Hulu that just came out, because I watched the first 3 episodes that are out and I thought I would discuss my thoughts and feelings on it because there's been quite a bit of controversy around the show. It's kind of been a bit of a PR nightmare. So while I do my makeup, we're going to chit chat about it. So before I even get into it, I think I would be doing a disservice to you guys if I didn't mention why it's been a PR disaster. So first and foremost, Pamela Anderson did not want this show made. She did not consent to it, and she had no part in the making of it, and neither did Tommy Lee, but we're not really worried about him because he's not a good person. So a lot of people were worried that the show would romanticize their very tumultuous relationship that turned very abusive. I don't think that we should be glorifying anyone's abusive actions, and I guess it depends on how you look at shows that are made. Like, if you think that making a show about something is glorifying it just because we're bringing it back up and putting it on TV, and TV is innately somewhat glamorous, then yes, I understand that. If you're someone who thinks that we should make these shows to expose abusers so that people don't keep supporting them, then I agree with you as well. First episode, let's just jump into that. We are before the tape comes out, but Pam and Tommy are married, and renovations are being done to Pam and Tommy's home, and the contractors are there. Tommy keeps changing his vision, and we get right off the bat that he is very aggressive, very in your face, very kind of do you know who I am mentality. Basically just keeps telling contractors to change things without paying them, and that's what starts the whole issue within the show. In this episode, we see Pam for about 5 whole minutes total, mostly Tommy Lee and the contractor, who's played by Seth Rogen. It comes around in the show that, and obviously this is based off real events, that one of the contractors goes looking for Tommy Lee to get money for some of the changes that they were making, and he runs into Pam, and she's dressed in like nothing but a t-shirt. Contractor kind of runs out of the room because he didn't mean to see her like that, especially, and you know, Tommy gets in his face and decides that he is going to fire them because he feels that they're trying to rip him off, and that's about it. They leave, and before this we see Tommy with guns, and he's showing them off to some of his friends, and just every time you see him, he's mad about something or just kind of like acting very like, look at all the things I have. So he's not a good person, and I want that to be really clear because a lot of people were saying they didn't want to watch a show that would be glamorizing him. He is not. Right off the bat, you're like, this dude is the villain. He is kind of controlling, and I think that was done in a way that you don't realize until other episodes, because you don't see Pam until later on. This whole episode is taking place right before the robbery happens, and if you don't know the origin of the story, basically the whole issue with the contractors happened. They were never paid by Tommy Lee, and so he, the contractor that is played by Seth Rogen, who is going through some financial troubles, decides that he's gonna get his money back one way or another, breaks into their home and steals the gun safe out of their house, and there's guns and money and jewelry and watches and the tape. That's kind of where the episode cuts off. Like, the finding of the tape, them realizing who is on it, and you kind of see the light bulb go off that this is huge, and then it shuts off. So that is basically episode 1. And I did forget to mention at the very beginning of the episode, it's showing an interview that, well, they shot it for this show with Lily James as Pamela on Jay Leno and her talking about the tape and kind of just avoiding the questions that people kept asking her about it, because obviously they were super invasive. Episode 2 is where we see Pam. We see her in a club, she's partying. It goes back in time, so I believe it's April 1995, and we see Pam and Tommy meet. They're both recently single. They're at the bar. Pam buys a round of shots for everybody at the bar. Tommy Lee goes over to thank her and basically says, "I'm Greek," and then licks her face. And they show it in the show, and then everybody's licking each other's faces. Like, it was just a very weird scene. And I will say episode 2 is where this goes off the rails. This is where we see how much Tommy Lee thought Pam Anderson as a novelty rather than a person, in my personal opinion. He's just very into the idea of who she is, and that she's, you know, she's the girl from Baywatch. She's one of the biggest actresses in the world at this point from that show, and she's getting ready to be on her last season of the show and break out into movies and just becoming like a bigger superstar. She goes to leave because she's going on a trip to Cancun, and Tommy follows her out and basically won't let her leave until he gets her number. And I mean, like, follows her to her car, gets in the back seat of her car, and literally is like holding her hostage until she's basically forced to give him her number. And she does, and then he calls her 17 times in the matter of like 12 hours. So again, it's all very uncomfortable. You can see that she's not fully comfortable with everything that's going on, and more so just kind of going with it so he'll leave her alone. He crashes the trip because he has to see her again, but he brings all of his friends with him. At this point, this is kind of where you see where the red flags are popping up, but they were definitely through rose-colored glasses of being like, oh, well, that's so sweet. He popped up on her. Like, he had to see her so bad. He went to another country to see her. No, that's weird. Normal people don't do that. That's stalking. Like, don't do that and think it's a romantic gesture. Are you out of your mind? We see them, again, partying at the club. And this is basically the 96 hours that from them meeting at the first club till them getting married, like, in Mexico on this trip. He starts giving her ecstasy. Like, he gets it from a friend and puts it in her drink. Now, she knows it's in there. She never says yes or no to the drugs. Like, she asks what it is, and he tells her it's love, and then he puts it in her drink, and then she drinks it. But at this point, you can tell, I mean, she's just absolutely so drunk that she could not be consenting to anything. And then basically it just goes into them being naked in front of each other while on ecstasy. And the show gets really crazy after this. And, like, I'm not going to talk about it because it's kind of a spoiler, and it's kind of like the biggest, like, shock value moment of the whole thing. But basically they reenact a part of what Tommy Lee says happened in that hotel room in his book. And, you know, I don't know how much his book is about Pam, but I feel like probably a lot, just given the circumstances. But then they get married. Then we get this amazing scene on a plane where they're sitting next to each other and they start asking each other questions about each other, like, what's your favorite food? What are your favorite movies? And you realize that they're pretty opposite. I thought it was just really well done with showing that these two knew kind of just the bare minimum about each other, like literally their first names. The storm happens, they realize, where are they gonna live? Whose house are they gonna move into now that they're married? And they move into Tommy's. And then, you know, there's a couple moments that I think if you have ever been in a relationship where after it was all said and done, you kind of looked at it and went, wow, I overlooked all those red flags because there were these really sweet moments, but these bad ones happened and I just ignored them because of the sweet moments. You'll notice it in this show. Also, I think if the show was made in 2015 or even like 2005, it would have been a Harley Joker type relationship. Like, that's how people would have looked at it. It would have been more romanticized. But now that we are in the time of Me Too and people speaking out about abuse, I think it's much easier to look at it and say, yeah, this was a moment of him gaslighting her, or this was a moment of him only seeing her as a novelty. For me, that was the biggest thing I noticed, is that he talks about her, like anytime he brings her up, he's like, Pamela Anderson, not just like, oh, my wife Pam, or, you know, like he always has to really reiterate, like, I got the hottest girl in Hollywood right now. Like, look at me, I am that guy. Episode 2 is just basically their lives that they're living, and then being together, and these construction workers being in their house and stuff. Episode 3 goes into more of the, we'll call it the present day, you know, we're to the point that the tape has been discovered, and the construction worker and an adult film director decide that this tape could make them so much money. They're going to take it to distributors and try and sell it and make a ton of money off of it. We have this scene, and it's Nick Offerman, who is the adult film director, who kind of looks at Seth Rogen and is like, are you sure that you want to do this? Like, these people have money and high-powered lawyers. And he's just so pissed off with Tommy Lee that it was very clear that whatever happened to Pam didn't matter as long as Tommy Lee got screwed over. So he just says, yeah, like, let's do it. I want this guy to go down, because he thinks that this is going to ruin Tommy Lee, which, as we know, it didn't. It just made him kind of a god in people's eyes more than he already thought he was. So at any point, someone in the adult film industry could have said, someone needs to call them and let them know their tape is stolen, and someone's shopping it around, and it never would have happened. I just found that kind of interesting, how many people actually saw it before it came out and still didn't do anything about it. They just kind of figured these guys aren't going to be able to do anything with this tape. However, this is when the plan is hatched through a really weird series of events that they can sell it online and no one will know that it's them selling it, because the internet offers some anonymity. And the way that they set it up is that you would call and order the tape from them. So like this episode, we see a lot more too of who Pam is being portrayed. Now I can't say like, oh yeah, this is her as a person, but this is how they're portraying her, that she was very open about the fact that she wasn't super secure with herself as an actress, that she wanted to be taken more seriously, but she couldn't be because of the way she looked. But she was supposed to be getting these big moments in Baywatch, and they kept getting cut, and Tommy was teaching her how to stand up for herself. And there's this scene where they're having dinner after her big scene gets cut, where she's clearly upset, and he's upset for her, and he just kind of hypes her up and tells her, like, you need to stand up for yourself, you need to do this, this, and this. And I think some of that, if, you know, all this is true, is why she was in love with him, because he was the person telling her, like, no, you're more than capable of doing these things you want to do. Pam has this meeting with her new PR person who's going to be handling her role in the movie Barbed Wire, and she talks about how Jane Fonda is her role model because she doesn't care who anybody, like what anybody's opinion is of her. She's just someone who does what she wants to do. Like, she's an activist and a sex symbol and like a fitness mogul. And basically Pam's saying that that's what she wants. She wants that freedom for her career, not just to be put in a box with one thing. And she kind of talks about how she's a people pleaser, and that's all she knows is to make people happy and make them smile. So we're getting a lot more focus on her at this point, but we're still seeing that Tommy has anger issues, but he hasn't taken them out on her yet. So now that we've talked about basically the summary of the episodes, I want to address the whole, like, Pamela Anderson and her consent about the show. So obviously this event was very traumatizing to her. I mean, who wouldn't this traumatize? Just show of hands if this wouldn't traumatize you. Not only, because we haven't even got to the abuse part yet, but the absolute violation of privacy. Being taken from their home. I mean, it wasn't even, like, this man was in their house. He was in their bedroom, actually, at one point. But the fact that it was made without any of her input or consent, I think, I don't know, it does make me feel really icky. But the show, a lot of people were concerned would be glorifying this whole situation, and it's not. There's actually a girl on TikTok who just talked about this. Her name is Chloe Mila. I love her. She talks about Sebastian Stan a lot. She said, like, if you're worried about that, don't, because so far you don't like Tommy Lee. And I think inevitably there's gonna be people who romanticize it. There's people in this world who really find Tommy Lee attractive. I personally don't, and he's also not a good person, so makes it real easy to not like him. So I think if you go in knowing what he did to her and the outcome of this whole situation, it's a little bit easier to watch because you have context as to what's going to happen. Like, you're not like, oh, I wonder what happens next. Like, no, we know what happened next. Also, so people on TikTok are saying that she came out saying that this is all very traumatic for her and she doesn't understand why it's being made. I've only seen one article talking about it, and all she said was she doesn't know who the actors are. She doesn't care to know who the actors are in this show, and she's not gonna watch it because it's a cheap knockoff of her life. Understandable. Courtney Love, who is her friend, is the one who came out and said, now this is as far as I know, who's come out and said she doesn't like that this show's being made. It's traumatic for her. Now, from the interviews and everything, you know, it seems that everyone is trying to be as respectful as possible. Like Lily Jane said, she did reach out to Pamela Anderson because she wanted her to be a part of her portraying her. She wanted to really like pick her brain about it and make sure that she was getting her side of things, but she didn't answer. I don't think it's 100% fair for it to be happening without at least Pam, because she was violated so much more and villainized by the media, and you know, people thought because she did Playboy that she wasn't allowed to be upset about her tape leaking because people had already seen her naked, so what did it matter? And it's like, you know, even in like people having issues with consent is not new. Even in 95, it was still a topic of conversation. So maybe that tells you just a little bit about how we've barely progressed as a society. But so far, I think the show does have something to offer in the sense of being really honest about Tommy Lee, because he got like this whole God's treatment after it because he was with Pamela Anderson, and not the fact that she was being treated really poorly after the whole thing. I am on the fence about the whole thing. However, I have to talk about the makeup. I don't think I would be a good makeup channel if I didn't talk about the makeup, because the makeup department, if the makeup department for this show doesn't get an award, I will be shocked. Lily James, the girl who played Cinderella in the live action movie, is Pam. I didn't like make the connection as to who it was when the pictures came out until I looked at her Instagram and I was like, oh my God. And then also Sebastian Stan obviously was transformed into Tommy Lee. So I did see a couple interviews talking about how he had to kind of like fast a lot, and it was a lot of running. Like, he definitely doesn't look like the Winter Soldier in this movie or this show. The makeup aspect of it, the temporary tattoos that he had lasted 3 days on the skin, and then they had to be reapplied, and they were stencils, I guess, so that they could perfectly line them up every single time, which is crazy to me. Like, that had to be so hard. And it was 2 makeup artists that did it. Lily James had to be on set at 3:30 in the morning every day to start hair and makeup because it was a 4-hour process, I think they said. She had to get a breastplate put on. It's a prosthetic breastplate that goes from her collarbone to right under her bust line. And they used 45 of those because you can only use them once. So she would get basically 1 put on in the morning and then wear that for the whole day, and then it would have to be changed out the next day. I mean, obviously she took it off at the end of the day for shooting, but you can't tell that that's not her chest. And then she had a forehead prosthetic put in because her hairline did not match up with Pam's. And she also had a tooth, like a, not a denture, but a mouthpiece essentially that mimicked more of Pam's like really big smile. And that is what helped kind of push her top lip out so that she had more of her face structure. I think there was something with her jaw too, they said that she, and I'm sure probably facelift tapes were involved. For updos, she had like all the wig pieces were custom. They were a 4-piece wig. The bangs, then there was the like main part of her hair, and they had to do like more than 1 wig to get all the correct dimensions of blonde. And then of what else they said, oh, like there was a custom nape piece done. All I have to do is finish the lips, but I did put on French tips because you can't be Pam without the French tips. Now mine are a little bit longer. She had the short square ones. These are like coffin kind of, but these were the only ones I could find. So that, and then the top and the nails are from Shein. I'm gonna put a little bit of a lighter color on my lips with the dark outline, because yeah. But overall review, like if I had to give it like 5 stars or whatever, I would say right now I'm at like 3.5, just because like I'm still iffy about her not being on board with it. I just want to see how they handle the tape and the court deposition stuff, because that is coming up in the next 3 episodes. I'm gonna watch it. I'm gonna continue watching it. And if I feel like they do Pam dirty, then I will come and tell you that they do Pam dirty if you're someone who's waiting to watch the full show. But until then, thanks for watching. Hopefully you guys enjoyed me talking about this show, and maybe if there's like, if the other episodes come up, I'll do a different look and talk about it. So yeah, that's it for me, and I will see you guys in the next one. Bye.